Hey everyone, before we dive in, I wanted to share something exciting. You can now send us a text message directly from your favorite audio platform. Yes. So whether you've got a question, want to give us feedback, or just want to share your thoughts on the show, I'd love to hear from you. Look in the show notes at the very start and you will see the phrase, send us a text. Click that link, send us your message, and that's it. We can't wait to read them. Now, let's jump in with this episode.
I tore my hip labrum. And it was one of those things like fight through it, fight through it, fight through it. And then, it was how can this impact me long term?
Today on the show, I'm talking with former rower at the University of Kansas and now an assistant commissioner for the Big West Conference. Angie Allen is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. Now grab your iced tea or your coffee, get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today's guest is the definition of what it looks like to evolve on the field, in the office, and in purpose. Angie Allen grew up around sports. Her dad coached Division I football for over 30 years. She was a three-sport athlete in Nixa High School in Missouri, but it was rowing at the University of Kansas where she finally found her niche. By the end of her time at KU, she became one of the fastest rowers in program history, a three-time academic All-Big 12 honoree, and a leader off the water, serving as the Big 12 Student Athlete Advisory Committee Chair and NCAA Autonomy Rep. Now, she's the Assistant Commissioner for Compliance and Student Athlete Engagement at the Big West Conference and also serves as the Arizona State Sport Law and Business Alumni Board Chair. She's helping students, athletes navigate life, leadership, and everything in between. Today, we're diving into her story from Waterloo, Iowa, where she was born, to D1 athlete and now a voice shaping the future of college athletics. We'll talk about identity, transition, and how you find purpose when your sport no longer defines you. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Angie Allen.
Danny, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today, especially in the space that you're in. I think it's so important that we talk about what life is like after you hang up that jersey.
It is. And for those out there that are maybe you're just joining us now, I actually started the podcast almost 2 years ago with a former, because I'm in Memphis, with a former Memphis basketball player and Harlem Globetrotter, Michael Wilson. He and I started it because during COVID, a lot of the Harlem Globetrotters were talking about how hard transition was for them when they left their sport, whether it was intentional or not. And even Michael talked about he played for the Harlem Globetrotters for 10 years. And even when he decided to quit and retire, he had a really hard time adjusting to life after the sport. And so I've done a lot of career coaching. And what I've found is it doesn't matter if you're an athlete, doesn't matter if you're in a regular profession. If you've done something for so long, and you suddenly are not doing it anymore. Like, what is your identity? How do you pivot? How do you transition into something else? And so I thought, for athletes, it's something that, most people don't talk about. You think about LeBron James, whatever he does next is easy. Stephon Curry, all of those people, Emmitt Smith. But what about the everyday athlete, the one that doesn't go into, the big stratosphere, just the normal everyday athlete? And so I thought that conversation was really important. We've had so many positive responses to that.
Absolutely. And it's completely understandable why. I think there's so many people that can resonate with this. I mean, we
Yes.
talk about college athletics, but high school athletes as well. I mean, if you have done that sport since the time you were 6 years old
Yes.
to 18, I mean, that portion just feels like, who are you? I'm a basketball player. And what
Exactly.
else? And that what else can be difficult to connect the dots to if you just identify as one thing.
And the other thing after, because I think you're going to be like almost close to 80, the 80th episode almost. Um, what I've also seen is that so many people, more so the women, they go into college with pro sports being the backup plan. It's the plan B. For men, there is no plan B. It's pro or not in their head, you know?
Oh, Absolutely. The things that I've heard just talking to primarily our male student athletes that do
Hmm.
have a future in those NFL spaces or really any professional league,
Right.
it's always been, okay, well, this is plan A. It's like, okay, well, what's plan B? There is no plan B because if there's a plan B, that means I'm not working hard
That's
enough on plan A.
that's
And
right.
it's like,
That is right.
that's not the approach we need here.
It is, and it's that mindset. And I get that, they want to think that way so that they can put all their energy into their sport. But reality is the higher you get in the chain of athletics, high school, college, pro, the less number of people are picked.
100%. And I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but it's like point something.
Yes.
It's so
Yes.
small and it's so hard. And are so many things that go into it. I mean,
Yes.
not alone just your talent, but your genetics. Things
Yes.
like that, things outside of your control. You can try as hard as you want to be 6'8", but you will not be 6'8" if you were not born with some of those blessings. So
I know, right?
a multitude of things.
So let's take that conversation right there and let's start with, I know where you are now, and that's a long title to have to say, okay? I know where you are now. I said that in the intro, but let's go back to when you were little. So let's go back and talk about how sports came into your life.
Absolutely. So you had mentioned my dad coached college
Yes.
football. So for I think I was born in August. By September 1st, first weekend of football, I was in a football stadium. So
Oh my
just from the
God.
very beginning, it's always been a
Yeah.
part of it. But the cool thing about that was that he's gone all the time. Love my dad, but he's
Right.
really busy. He was a head football coach. So I correlated family time anytime we were at the football field or at a game, because that's
Ah,
when I saw all of my family together.
yeah.
Um, so not only was it the family aspect of it, but it was super fun. Like you're 7, 8 years old, you're going to tailgate. I remember the first time I realized not everyone knows what tailgating is. It was like a shock to me that no one had done it before. I just thought everyone tailgated on Saturdays. So the relationship with sport for me is like that was my family. That's where I got to see
Yeah.
everyone. So it was a great foundation to start with. But I think as I progressed, got a little bit older, started realizing just some of the things that went into it was we would be at the end of the year banquet every year. There was always a banquet, and the seniors would get up there and say a little thing, hey, thanks, coaches, whatever, whatever. But it never failed. It was always like the biggest, baddest guy on the field would get up in front of that room and say, I'm really glad I was given this opportunity. Start to get emotional. If I wasn't here today, good chance I'd either be jail
Yeah.
or dead. And unfortunately, a lot of the statistics where some of these guys were coming from, and I'm just
Yes.
speaking primarily football.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was true. So for them, it wasn't just necessarily about the camaraderie playing the sport. It was an avenue out. It was a way
Yeah.
to a better life. It was a college degree. A lot of things. I mean, first generation student too, a lot of things that they would not have been able to get if they hadn't had this avenue.
Right.
So starting to not only put together it's a family thing, it's really fun, but also understanding the opportunities that it allows a lot of people that quite honestly probably will not go
Yeah.
professional, but gave them an opportunity to expand their horizon through sport. So that's kind of where my passion for sport started, was witnessing that at a very young age.
And that's got to be a powerful thing as a child to see that and hear that conversation over and over and over again. And I think that in some ways I wish a lot of kids had that opportunity to hear those stories,
Absolutely.
and it would change, I think, outlook on life in a lot of different ways as well.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the stories. I went to a lot of practices. We traveled with the team,
Yeah.
all those fun stuff. I got to see them without their jerseys on. And when you're young, I mean, they're these big,
Yeah.
awesome guys, but they're also kind of goofy and they're kind of funny. And they're more than just who they are in their jersey, right? So I
Yeah.
got to see kind of both of those identities rather than just the star athlete on the field, which a lot of people only see.
Yeah.
So that continued to kind of give me a well-rounded view of who these people are, but also kind of how this industry allows them to kind of flourish in those
Sure.
ways.
Sure. Now, did you feel pressure to get into sports, or was that just something that it was just a natural progression for you?
So it's funny you ask that because I get that question a lot, and
I'm sure.
quite honestly, no. I will say my mom and dad are fantastic. They never necessarily pressured. And I do have two brothers, and they kind of experienced the same thing. They never felt pressure to play
Right.
football either. And they were blessed with that 6'7", 6'8" gene pool. So they did have an opportunity to play at the next level, and they did. But for me, it was like I mentioned, it felt like a family. This almost felt like the family business. So
Right.
although it was never pushed on me, it was something that I did seek out because that's where I felt the most comfortable.
So what sport did you start with?
I was in that area of like basketball, volleyball, track. I think just growing up, it was a little bit of like get the kids out of the house so they don't break
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So we did all of it when we were growing up. But I landed probably most heavily on basketball just through kind of the formative years, and then still
Right.
did some volleyball stuff. I mean, all my girlfriends that played basketball also played volleyball. So it's kind of just what the friend group
Sure.
did. But I was probably the most serious about basketball. And I had a couple opportunities at the collegiate level. But growing up on a college campus, I kind of knew what I wanted my experience to be like. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete at the high Division 1 levels. And that's kind of what I was
Right.
looking for, which is kind of where KU came in and offered me the opportunity there, which was great.
Okay, so first I have to give a shout out because my best friend, she was the feature twirler at KU in 1998 and 99. So I've been on campus. And so when I saw that you had gone to KU, I was like, oh my God, and I was just telling her last night, I'm like, I get to interview this lady who was at KU. You were there much more recent than her, but
Well, I will say this, and not to interrupt you.
yeah,
So my
that's
dad
fine.
was the head football coach there during that time. So
So they probably knew each other.
maybe, yeah. So Terry Allen, who's the head coach there from 97 to 2001. So she probably,
I'm sorry. It was 1987.
okay.
That's when I make a mistake.
We can say it was 97. We'll just let her have that. Just tell your best friend you gave her 10 years.
But I do remember going up there because they were recruiting her. And so I got, being the best friend, she was like, you've got to come with me for the weekend. So we got to go up there for a football game. And it was an amazing experience. I love the campus, a lot of hills, a lot of hills.
Absolutely. A lot of hills.
Yeah.
They do say you get your KU calves
Yeah.
walking up those hills. So you kind of dodge that freshman 15 with all of those workouts going to and from class.
So when you talk about, you already had an idea of what the D1 experience you wanted was.
Mhm.
What was that in your head? Real talk. I want to help more people like you show up online with confidence, starting with your LinkedIn profile. If your profile still reads like a job history instead of a reflection of who you are now, we need to fix that. I offer a LinkedIn makeover service where I rewrite your headline, your about section, and your experience to tell your story in a way that gets noticed, that showcases your expertise. It's personal, it's real, and it's all about helping you stand out for the right reasons. Book your makeover at sandy-adams.com/LinkedIn, and let's get your profile working for you.
In my head, I wanted a kind of a college town. I didn't necessarily want to
Right.
go to a school that was in a big city. I'd kind of grown up in smaller cities. I wanted to be
Sure.
in a community that supported the university. I
Right.
had been in different communities where some did, some didn't. I just felt like there was a more cohesive feel and kind of
Yeah.
everyone was in this together. I had mentioned he did coach at Kansas for a little bit, so I'd
Right.
already had kind of a homey feel to it. And then if there's an opportunity to be involved with the athletic department, whether as an athlete or working in it, that was
Right.
attractive to me as well. So I almost got the best of both worlds. I still got to compete at the Division 1 level with
Right.
all the resources that come along with that. And then another thing at the time, I didn't want to have to work out all summer. For some reason in my mind, I wanted opportunities to do internships and
Well,
things like
no,
that.
that makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
right, and it's something it's really funny looking back on it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that actually mattered to me a lot more than I thought it did." And growing, you didn't have to work out in the summer, you didn't have to go to summer school. So, because of that, I got to do amazing things. I went to Africa for 2 summers and spent a couple months out
Oh,
there doing stuff. So, those were kind of the things that I was looking for. I wanted a little bit of freedom during the summer
Right.
piece of it because I had witnessed my dad and all those football players there during the whole summer. And I was like, no, thank you. And then having a community that supported the university and kind of felt like home.
I love that whole train of thought there. I really do. My biggest question is, you were three sports in high school. None of those was rowing.
No,
How did that recruitment by KU for rowing, had you ever rowed before?
not even once. Quite honestly, I didn't know KU had a rowing program. I played some summer volleyball. We were up in Kansas City. I was at a volleyball tournament.
Right.
The coach was kind of going to these games, not so much scoping out volleyball talent, but just looking for girls that were fairly tall, fairly strong, and maybe a little coordinated.
Right.
And was able to get our information through kind of the volleyball circuit,
Sure.
sent me some feeler letters. Quite honestly, and I've been very transparent with my coaches since then, I sent it back almost kind of as not necessarily a joke. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sent it back. Couple weeks later, I get a call and asked if I wanted to come on an official visit. Like, sure, free trip to Lawrence. I like Lawrence.
Exactly.
I still got people there. Um,
Exactly.
Took my trip and it checked all of the boxes that I was looking for. I got all of the resources, preferred scheduling, nutritionists, athletic
Right.
training, weight training, all of that good stuff. I still got to have some of the competitive spirit. And not necessarily most importantly, but a big factor, they were going to pay for my school. So it just felt
Yeah.
like a no brainer. Like, why would I not go try this sport I've never done
Right.
to see if I could be good at it? Plus, I was a little stubborn. I was like, well, how hard can it really be? I can do
I
this.
love that. I say that all the time. Like, how it's not brain science. How hard can it be?
Hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Really?
Hardest thing, rowing. Oh, I was sore in places you didn't have. I didn't even know you had muscles.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of respect for endurance athletes after that. But hardest thing, greatest thing. It set me up for so much success. So much success. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
It's interesting because you're right. I had another rower on here. She won a national championship in high school and college at,
Right.
is it Northeastern or Northwestern in Boston?
Maybe
Forgive me for not having my notes. I wasn't prepared to take.
Northwestern is in Chicago,
So it's
but
Northeastern.
yes,
I'm going to be slim. This may be a part I edit out. Okay.
sure.
But she talked about how string, and she was, what is it called, the person that sits at the front end of the boat.
Yeah, so stroke. So that was my seat as well.
So, and she talked about how the weight, she could only vary like 1 pound before or after
Oh,
125.
she was a coxswain.
Yeah. And just, she retired in her junior year because she wanted to continue nursing. But,
Yeah,
she just talked about how it was, she would take, get everybody else's exercise done, and then she had to go exercise differently. And it
yeah.
was just so, take us, okay, you were already familiar with Lawrence. Okay, Lawrence,
Mhm.
Kansas, for anybody out there that doesn't know. You were already familiar.
Yeah.
What was the adjustment other than the sport itself to that first year as a freshman at KU?
There's a level of freedom
Mm,
your freshman year of
yeah,
college.
yeah,
I had been fortunate enough. I grew up in a household that you are never late to practice. You will go to class. Like it's almost like it's unacceptable to
sure.
even think about not showing up to some of these places that you're expected. So not going to class and showing up late or not going to practice didn't even cross my mind. So when it came to kind of the structure and the time management, I felt pretty good just kind of growing up in an environment like that.
Right.
I think the biggest shift is, we talk about all the things student athletes have to do in the structure. I really like structure, so I think that was a
Yeah.
great thing for me. But when I tell you I had almost every hour of the day planned for me. I'm not joking. I mean, we
Yeah.
started at 6 a.m. and then we would have either 8 a.m. classes or 9 a.m. classes, and then you'd go eat, and then you had training, and then you'd see the nutritionist, then you had life skills development. I mean, they scheduled the whole day for you up until about 9 o'clock when you had study hall. As I mentioned, I like that. Others had problems with that because they were used to having a little bit more free time.
Yeah.
So the biggest transition is probably managing my own calendar and just being more on top of, all right, what do I need to do tomorrow? Ooh, I need to make sure I have this prepared because I won't have time to do it tomorrow. So kind of just being a little bit more aware of my own schedule and not necessarily mom or dad saying, all right, hey, get in the car, we gotta go. So it did take a little bit more independence.
Yeah.
But I felt fairly comfortable with just what that time management load looked like because I was familiar with what that looked like from my dad,
Sure.
being kind of around that culture.
No, and that had to have been a big help growing up in that culture. That was already like ingrained in you, I would suspect. Yes.
Absolutely. And it was, if I were to think, okay, like couple months down the road, right? Okay, here's a good example. Spring break. Everyone's talking about what are you guys doing for spring break? What do you want to do this and this and this? And it's like, well, I know I don't have a spring break because I'm training at that point. So I won't even entertain that conversation.
Yeah.
And then others maybe that aren't as familiar, like, oh, spring break sounds like a lot of fun. Like maybe I'll try to get out of training so I can go hang out with you guys or go kind of through that whole mind exercise. But it's like, I got to shut it down early. I'm not available.
Right.
And some people just didn't like that because, college comes with this societal view of like, go crazy, have fun, and all this. And it's like, I got 6 a.m. practice. I have stadiums to run. I got to go to bed at 9 p.m. or else I'm
Right.
not going to be any good for anyone. So, growing up in that space and just understanding that that's what it was going to be like made it easier for me to transition. But I mean, you're still 18 years old trying to figure
Yeah.
it out. So, it was it could have been way harder, I'll say that.
Yes. What was the easiest part about being at KU? Or was there an easy part?
You know, I was very fortunate to have fantastic teammates.
Mm.
Straight out of the gate, I feel like I made some lifelong friends, very early on the team. And I know people have different experiences with teammates, but I think one of the easiest things I was able to do is make fast friends,
Mm.
which is a topic that I think is really interesting because I talk to my student athletes now, and the question is like, how do you make friends outside of being on a team? Because that's a real, not necessarily
Sure.
issue, but that's a real question.
It sure is.
So when I was going to KU, it was easy because I had my teammates that turned into friends. Um, but I think for others, especially high school student athletes that not don't necessarily have an opportunity at the college level, I would recommend finding things to get involved in because that's the best way to make friends.
I agree. I lived in Houston for 16 years and I worked for myself and I was having a hard time. I was going to these
Mhm.
networking luncheons and stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized early on they were never going, they wanted me to buy their services just like I wanted them to buy my services.
Yeah.
So I stopped, I stopped going because it was a waste of my time. And then I thought, I need to network. Why don't I go and join groups that I'm interested in? Not
Yeah,
networking groups, but go and find places that you have an interest. Because guess what? They all have jobs too in different things.
exactly.
Best decision I ever made. And that's what I tell people all the time, go and do something that you have an interest in. Then networking becomes much easier.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that as your example. And I'm recently going through the transition of being in the office every day to having a more hybrid schedule. And there are days where I'm like, I have to get out
It's
of
hard.
my place of residence. And one thing I've picked up on is going to workout classes.
Yes.
It's a sense of community. I really enjoy the people there. They are now my friends. I'm actually training to become an instructor now because I like it so much. So I think there are ways you can get involved in different areas that you're passionate about,
Sure.
like going to a workout class or join a running club or a walking club, because you do need to have some kind of social stimulation.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I have the same struggles, and I find different things to do to get out, just to get out and be around people. But you have to. You can't just, there's got to be a good balance between, work life and getting out and being around people. You're in California, correct?
And yes.
How has the adjustment been to living in California? Did you move there for the job?
So I moved here for the job. A big component of my move was my fiance is a Marine and he's stationed out here. So we finally were able to make the military and sport career work. That usually
Right.
never happens because those
It
are two
doesn't.
very demanding fields. So it worked out for the both of us to move out here. But I was able to get on with the Big West prior to the move, so it worked out great.
Are you in the San Diego area?
We are right north of San Diego. We are very south point of Orange County. We're in San
Okay.
Clemente, California.
My friend Michelle, her first husband was in the military too, so she lived in San Clemente. So see, it's just
So
it's
KU, I feel like I'm getting a lot of KU vibes. So you're saying I'm on the right path if others have done
you are. I should have worn a KU shirt. I don't have one, but I should have gotten one. Um, okay, so you move out there, and you're right. Military and sports, it's both very demanding. Um, what? So was your well? You okay? I'm getting excited now. But after you left Kansas, you
it.
decided to get postgraduate work in Arizona State, correct?
I did. I took a year in between
Okay.
where I went to the Big 12. I was a championships assistant working in the championships department. So a lot of
Okay.
operations.
Okay.
Through that experience, they kind of were like, hey, you can stick around here for another year, but we really think you should go get your graduate degree. What are you interested in besides this? And, I kind of weighed an MBA. And then at this point, it was pre house settlement, kind of pre all the big lawsuits. But I
Yeah.
was like, I keep hearing them coming, they're knocking on the door. Maybe I should do law school. So the cool thing about Arizona State was they really combined the two. My degree is in sport law and business. So it's kind of the best of, not the best, the most applicable things to
Sure.
sports in an MBA, and then the most applicable things to sport on the law side. And they put it together. It's actually through the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, which is awesome too. So I had fantastic professors, and then I was able to get a graduate position within Sun Devil Athletics.
Okay, so I'm going to go back 1 second. You're a freshman in college. What were your career plans when you started at KU?
I 100% thought I was going to be a physical therapist. I thought that was what I wanted to do. I had my fair share of injuries when I was in high school. And I just kind of liked the idea of being able to help people and heal them in that way. That was until my sophomore year of college, and I took organic chemistry, and I realized
Michelle did the same thing.
my brain doesn't work that way. I tried so hard to get my brain to make those connections. I could not. I went to my academic advisor probably the second week of class and was in tears. And I was like, I can't do this. I need to do something with
Yeah.
sport. And she's like, sport management. She got all of my classes, bless her. She got all of my classes switched for like that semester. And I was off and going. And, after that, school gets really easy when you care about it,
Sure, it
and the
does.
subjects that you're learning about. So after that, it was so easy and it was fantastic. So it happened right at my sophomore year.
So, and I skipped over this, but when you were a senior at KU, you had
Yeah.
an injury that ended your rowing.
It did. I tore my hip labrum, and it was one of those things like fight through it, fight through it, fight through it. And then, it was, how can this impact me long term?
Right.
And I had already accepted the position at the Big 12 conference. So I only had a tight window of time where I could have the surgery and then have some rehab stuff to be able to, quite honestly, walk when I got to the Big 12 conference office. So I kind of had to back up my surgery. Unfortunately, was not able to compete in the final Big 12 championship.
Right.
Um, Although it hurt really bad at the time, I was very happy to not be on crutches when I moved to Dallas, Texas from Lawrence, Kansas. That would have been really difficult.
Yes, it would have, because that's very much, yeah, it would have been. So let's go to Arizona then, and
Mhm.
you're at Arizona State and you're going through your program. What were your intentions then? Because as you said, you heard about pending lawsuits coming, and you're right there at the cusp of everything that's going to happen.
Yeah. So my first year at Arizona State was 2019. And I think NIL happened 2020. So my first year, we're all kind of hearing about it. And then if anyone tracks on it as much as I do, I'm kind of a nerd about it. It was like, all right, June June 1, this is going to happen July 1. So people kind of had a
Right.
month, but we had kind of been talking about it because there was rumblings for about a year. So I really kind of was leaning into like, how is this NIL thing going to like either mess us all up or like, how are
Right.
we going to capitalize on it? And then it happened and then things got crazy and then COVID and it was a mess. But to answer your question, what was I really leaning into? I was trying to put myself in a position to be able to create value immediately.
Right.
I think one of the cool things about doing the law stuff was that they see it on your resume, you kind of get eyeballs on it, but then when you get the interview, how are you able to translate that into something that creates you hireable?
Right.
So I was really trying to have a really good understanding of NIL through my time there. So when people talk to me when I'm interviewing, they can see, what do you think of NIL? And I would have a really good answer for them. So I was really trying to be on the front edge of whatever was going on with college athletics at the time. It was NIL.
Okay, so you graduate from Arizona State. What's your next job?
So I go to the Missouri Valley Conference, but I will share this story because I hope that it will help someone that might be going through a similar experience. I was in the
Yes.
job market during the COVID pandemic. So
Oh, yes.
no one's hiring, especially in sports. We're not even really having games.
Exactly.
But, I was trying to be selective with my resumes. I wasn't trying to be like, you get a resume, you get like all of that for any job. I really did have a process going through that. And, I applied to 4 or 5. And if I'm being the most transparent, I hadn't dealt with a whole lot of rejection before. I've been very
Yeah.
fortunate to be able to get most of the things that I had put myself in a position to do. So getting those first few letters of like, sorry, not necessarily you're not good enough, we're just not hiring right now, was like really hard.
Yeah.
But kind of kept with it. It's kind of where I'm eyeballing May, so it's like almost here. And at this point, I'm like, am I going home? I'm not moving back in with my parents, but what am I doing here? And I see a connection that I had from the Big 12 conference. His name is Jeff Jackson. He oversaw men's basketball when I was there. We
Mhm.
worked together on a couple of things. It was his first year, it was my first year. So we were kind of the newbies. But I always really enjoyed working with him.
Right.
So Jeff gets the commissioner job at the Missouri Valley Conference. And I'm familiar with the Missouri Valley Conference. My dad was at Missouri State for a while. He was at Northern Iowa for a while. And that just kind of felt like my home conference, if that makes sense. I was very
Oh, it
familiar.
does.
So I sent him a note just kind of out of the blue, like, hey Jeff, congratulations on getting the commissioner job. Hope all is well. Like that was it. And he emails me back like 2 weeks later, and he's basically just like, hey, give me a call sometime. Here's my cell. And like internally, I was like, don't freak out, don't freak out. But if he offered me a job, that would be awesome. But I wasn't trying to get too excited about it. So I give him a call almost immediately. I was like, hey, Jeff, how's it going? And he's like, hey, like, how's Arizona State? He had no, I've been there for the last couple of years. I was like, oh, it's good. He's like, well, what are you going to do when you graduate? I was like, honestly, I don't really know yet. I've got a couple things out there going through the interview process for a couple others, but I don't have anything set in stone. And he's like, well, do you want to come work for me? I was like, yes. And he's like, okay. I was like, well, what am I going to do? He's like, I don't know yet. I was like, how much can you pay me? He's like, I don't know that either. I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, but I'll get back to you. I was like, okay. So, like, looking back, I put a lot of faith in this man, and I didn't hear from him for about a month. I actually turned down another job,
Oh my
and I
God.
called Jeff and I was like, hey, were you serious? Because like I just turned down a job that I
Right.
think would have been really good, but like I think I can do great things for you. And he's like, no, I'm so serious. Like basically it was kind of red tape with his
Yeah.
transition in. You can offer me anything until he was in the role. And he's like, write down your job description, write down what you want your job description to be in your title, and we'll look at it and we'll make a decision. I was like, awesome. So very rarely in life do you get to write your own job
Yeah.
description.
Very rarely.
Yeah. So of course I'm kind of like, all right, I'm 24, 23. Like I want that sport. I want an oversight of this. I want an oversight of that. So I kind of was like throwing everything out there to see if I'd be able to get
Mm.
something. Lo and behold, we have that meeting. He's like, looks good. If you think you can do it, let's rock it. So I got everything I wanted. I did take a little bit of a pay cut when it comes to the other job offers I have, but it was completely worth it. Jeff put me in all of the best situations to be successful. And I credit not only Jeff for hiring me at the Missouri Valley, but Bob Bowlesby, who hired me at the Big 12, to put me in those positions to really grow and succeed.
So, I hear a lot, especially when it comes to athletes, especially here in Memphis, we are always encouraging the players because I'm a basketball booster.
Yep,
So, we're always talking about making those connections. You never know when you need those in the future.
absolutely.
How important and how important has networking been to the evolution of your career?
Can I say the most important? I mean,
Sure.
networking is the reason I am here in this role today.
Yeah.
Networking and then just always wanting to help show up and put my best foot forward. As I mentioned, Jeff oversaw men's basketball. I worked more with the women's basketball side of
Right.
things. Um, but every time he saw me or witnessed me working, I was working hard. I was showing up. I was staying late when asked. I mean, I was very early in my career, so I had no real responsibilities elsewhere. So anytime anyone needed help, me, I got you.
Right.
So he witnessed me in that way. But he was able to see how that could translate more into a role that would work for his organization. So networking, I mean, I'm still learning. I think networking, learning how to network is a process that never
It
ends.
is. It is.
But I think there is a true thing when it comes to trying to build authentic relationships. If you're reaching out saying, "Hey, Sandy, it's Angie, what can you give me?" No.
Yes.
If you're reaching out, "Hey, Angie, tell me about your life. How did you get there?" Great. I'd love to talk to you about that. I'd love to share any wisdom and advice and all that good stuff. I think being able to ask, not necessarily for something in return, but just ask for people's time, um,
Yes.
is way better than trying to do the latter
No,
or
I
the
agree.
former. Yeah.
And for any of you, I always like to tell people how I met. I found you on LinkedIn. I routinely go on there and I search for student athlete, former athlete, something like that. And then you popped up and I saw the KU thing, obviously. But I also had not had a lot of rowers on here. You are actually the second one. So I thought that was also interesting and just the whole thing. So I reached out to you and you said yes, and here we are. And again, it goes back to that, reaching out to people, you know,
Absolutely. And I
taking
think people underestimate the power of LinkedIn.
they
That's one of the
do.
first thing I tell my student athletes now. They underestimate the power of LinkedIn. And then for current students and student athletes, I think you underestimate the power of what it means to be able to say, "I'm a student."
Yes.
Because me and my time, which depending on the time of year can be very limited, but if I see like, "Hey, I'm a student, I'm trying to figure out what's happening for me next." I'm like, "Oh, I remember when I was a student,
Right.
I would have loved for someone to talk to me." And I'm not necessarily guilted into it, but I'm like, I'm going to help this person because I've been in their shoes before.
Sure.
I think it's easier to make that connection sometimes where it's like, "Hey, I'm Angie. I'm an entry level job here.
Yeah.
Can I grab some time?" Like, I'm kind of like, "Hey, you already got a job. Like, you'll figure it out." But like being able to say, "Hey, I'm a student," I think that's very powerful.
And I think that a lot of students these days don't lean into that. They think
100%.
that they don't have any experience, so they have no value. And I'm like, people are more likely to talk to you because they don't see it as you're wanting something,
Yes.
and I think it's much easier for them to get conversations with people, going from the fact that they're a student.
Absolutely. And my other trick I kind of share is, when you're doing these informational interviews, I mean, you just ask them about themselves and they will
Yeah,
talk about themselves. And people love talking about themselves and it makes them feel good. So, whether or not you actually did anything, they feel good after they leave the conversation with
sure they
you.
do.
And then they leave this relationship or conversation with, like, "Well, you make me feel good. So I like you."
Yes.
And that can be key sometimes because then it's like, "Oh, Sandy, I like Sandy. She makes me feel good. Well, maybe Sandy should meet so and so, or maybe Sandy should be here
Exactly.
with me here." Like, it's just how you make people feel, which is a lot of me reading books about like the psychology and things like that,
Yeah.
which is me going my path of like networking. But it's very interesting. And I always try to share that with student athletes.
Well, no, I totally agree. And I'm a huge supporter of LinkedIn as well. To me, it's much easier to use LinkedIn than to walk into a room of people you don't even know. You
Absolutely.
know. Let's talk about, have you ever in the past few years had a moment when you've had a self-doubt or felt like you weren't qualified to do something? I mean, you talked about rowing, you were like, how hard can it be, right?
Mhm.
But as a woman and as, a young person coming up in the ranks, have you ever had those moments and how did you deal with them?
I had mentioned Jeff Jackson, who was instrumental in kind of helping develop me in that way. I remember like my first month at the Missouri Valley Conference. Mind you, I still feel very green, and we're coming out
Right,
of COVID, so I feel like there's just so many big problems. I'm like, who am I to help with any of this? Because I don't. No one really knows what's going on.
right.
And I can distinctly remember him being in a athletic director meeting, and he asked if I wanted to sit in. Which, side note, anytime anyone asks if you want to sit in a meeting, please do it. You will learn the
Yes.
conversations that are being talked about, just whatever the topic is. It's really taught me how to think better and ask better questions, listening to other people kind of address the issue at hand. So that's over there. But welcomed me into a meeting, and it sounds so small, but he asked me in front of the group, Angie, what do you think about this? And at that point, I hadn't really allowed myself to create opinions or thoughts on it because I had just always deferred. I'm like, well, you guys
Right.
know what you're doing. I'm just here to listen. It's like, no, no, no. You need to be able to come into a room prepared enough that if you are asked, what do you think about this? You are able to give an answer that not necessarily intelligent, because there's a lot of people that give not intelligent answers to questions,
That's
but
true.
being able to come into a room and just formulate your own idea or stance on different topics. So I kind of relate that back to your question. I did not feel qualified to be in some of the
Yeah.
spaces that I was in, but kind of being put on the spot a couple of times, my feet to the fire. I was like, all right, I need to be able to be prepared for any room that I am in because he's welcomed me here. So now I need to be able to prove why I should stay.
No, I love that story. I think it's a very powerful one. And you're right. Anytime you get the opportunity, I say it, to sit at a table where you're not the smartest person, you learn so much. Like
Yes,
so much. If you're the smartest person, then you need to find another table.
exactly. And I think not being afraid of saying, it's not necessarily I don't know, but it's, hey, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yes.
I've
Yes.
I've now I'm way more comfortable saying it. At the time I was not, because I felt like it was a sign of weakness, especially as you said, being in a
Right.
female. Usually probably not a lot of them in the space. Um, but being able to kind of craft an answer, not necessarily I don't know, but like, can you expand on that a little bit more? I'm not sure I'm fully grasping.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, usually when I ask that question, someone will come up to me after the meeting, just being like, I'm so glad you asked that. I have no idea what they were talking about.
See.
I was like, perfect. Okay. Well, now we all feel a little bit better and we're a little bit more on the same page. So I think kind of both of those things, like be able to come in, feel comfortable, but being also, hey, I really want to understand this. And that's the other thing. I'm excited. I really want to understand this. Can you maybe just use different words to describe it? I think that also shows that you care and you're really trying to actively listen.
No, I love that. As you were preparing, well, obviously with Jeff, he already knew you, but
Yep.
for your current position, I
Yeah.
watched a YouTube video that you sent me, and they had asked these questions, and I was like, oh, I love those questions. I'm going to put them in here, because that's really a lot of what I do professionally. How did you navigate preparing for the interview process for your current position?
So, I mean, a lot of it was doing research.
Mhm.
I had seen the job description, and quite honestly, I'd had a couple conversations with people inside of the Big West organization where I was like, "Hey, like, what are you kind of looking for?"
Right.
So I gathered that. I read a lot of the articles. I read the bio of the person that was previously in this role. She had now moved on to an SWA role, which is awesome. So that's kind of a promotion. So I was like, all right, this could be a cool thing for me if I do want to continue to elevate because the person before me did as well.
So, what for those out there that may not know, what is SWA?
So it's a senior women
Okay.
administrator. It's the highest ranking typically. It's like your highest ranking female in an athletic department.
Okay.
So that was kind of in my mind a promotion. So I was like, all right, the person before me must be killing it because she's already been taken somewhere bigger and brighter. Um, so I read lot of research, as I mentioned, had some conversations, and then also kind of went out to my network. There was actually a person at one of our member institutions that I had worked with at the Big 12, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? Not so much the role, but like tell me about the culture as well. Because I felt pretty confident in my abilities. But do I
Right.
really want to move to a different organization when I really enjoyed the organization I was in and Jeff was kind of like my guy? Am I ready to make that move? And we had a really great conversation. So tapping into my network, researching, and then just having conversations, I think were the three big things that prepared me for the interview process.
How did you, because you've talked about how you've really learned the value of LinkedIn. How
Mhm.
did you, how did you connect who you are online, who you are on a resume, and who you are when you show up for the interview, whether it's virtually or in person?
You know, I so funny story about this. One of my minors in college at KU was leadership studies. And
Okay.
I remember walking into those classes ready to be like, all right, like tell me how to boss people around. Like, how do I get people to do what I want them to do?
Right.
And 90% of the topics that we covered was how do you handle yourself in
Yes.
situations? How
Yes.
important is it for you to show up authentically in different places? Because how do you get these people to trust you? Like they're not going to follow you if they don't trust you. So one of the things I really try to do is try to connect those things, keep them pretty close together. Who I am online is pretty close to who I am. I feel like in person.
Right.
So I try to show up not only like bringing the stuff with me, but I'm pretty much here, not necessarily take it or leave it, but like I'm very transparent. I will answer pretty much any question because I do believe that is the best way to be able to work is with a level of authenticity that sometimes can be hard to find.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, so talking about your experience, because you've been in that position for like a year, correct?
Yep, little over a year.
How do you feel? Describe who you think you are today versus that first day on the job. How have you changed in that year, in this past year?
So so my title has actually changed. I've been kind of promoted, which was awesome. A little bit of it was because of just personnel changes within the office, but I stepped into the shoes. I agreed to do it. So when I first came on, I was assistant commissioner of student athlete development, something like that, where I primarily just did SAC related things. For those that aren't familiar, student athlete advisory committee, and did more like on programming for student athletes. Like 4 months into my job, our compliance director left, took another job at the Ivy League conference or Ivy League. We were very excited for him getting closer to family. So we had an opening in our office. And at this point, house settlement was kind of coming through. We
Yeah.
were looking at, we need to decrease expenses from the conference office. How can we do that? And one of those ways was to potentially absorb the position. So had a lot of really good conversations with our deputy commissioner, Christy Giddings, and Dan Butterly, our commissioner, asking if I would be comfortable stepping into the compliance role. Granted, really don't have compliance on my resume. The closest thing would be the sport law degree,
Right.
which for depending on who you are, some would say that compliance and some would say it is, but they're like, would you be interested? And at that point, I was looking to add more tools to the tool belt. I feel like I had the
Mhm.
capacity to do it. I want to be a team player. How can I help? And they're like, all right, like we'll give you the assistance you need for 6 months. If there's resources, you need extra training, let us know. But we're going to move you into that role. So your question is, how do I feel about my role now than it was when I first started? I mean, it's expanded.
Right.
I would say I'm very happy with it. as I mentioned, tools on the tool belt, but also it's kind of a crazy time to be in NCAA compliance. So in a way, it's kind of fun. It was the perfect time to get involved because they're basically throwing out the rule book anyway. So I don't really have to have a whole lot of experience coming into it.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
So it actually ended up being perfect, and it worked beautifully when it came to me stepping into that role and being able to learn things that I hadn't necessarily been able to focus on previously.
So, we actually, I had reached out to you before the settlement that
Mhm.
happened, and you had put it off because you had to deal with all of that. So, for you, how has kind of for those out there that maybe don't know very much, can you give us a brief overview of the settlement and how that has impacted you going forward?
Yeah, so 30,000-foot level, and there's a lot of
Yes, there are.
lawsuits still out there. So this is not biblical truth. But the House settlement was essentially back damages to student athletes that were not able to profit off their NIL prior to NIL being legal, as you would say. So it was a lot of money, $2.9 billion over a 10-year period that the NCAA is going to have to pay those student athletes, primarily at Power Five institutions, for those monies, those wages that were lost over that
Right.
period. It definitely rocked the system a little bit. It set us up for what is now revenue sharing. That is the direct, I don't want to say consequence because I feel like consequence has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
One of the things that came out of the settlement was revenue sharing. So July 1 of this year, we're now in a revenue sharing model. What that looks like, quite honestly, we're still trying to figure that out. Really, what we know now is you are capped at $2.5 million that an institution, or $20.5 million that an institution can pay directly to the student athletes. We are essentially in a salary cap model, although we are not professional sports. We are using a lot of the mechanisms and models that you would see in an NFL or an NBA team, or really any professional league team use to manage a roster.
Right.
Um, so you are correct. You reached out to me pre-settlement being approved, and then as soon as it was approved, it was almost a mad dash to try to figure out what was
Right.
going to happen. And I always, I don't want to ever throw our friends at the NCAA under the bus because, quite honestly, they catch a lot of flack for decisions that we as a membership make. For
Right.
those that maybe are not aware, when it comes to the decision making at the NCAA level, it's essentially made up of committees of members,
Mhm.
conferences, institutions. So those are your athletic directors, your coaches, your conference administrators on committees making these decisions. So I think, like I said, the NCAA kind of gets a bad rap sometimes, even though these decisions are membership wide. Um, but it was a little difficult when you get the lawyers involved because there's not necessarily gag orders in place, but there's some information that can't get out. And when you share it with a lot of people, it does. So there was a lot of tension and frustration just between NCAA membership that really caused a riff. And I say that to say the last 2 months have been crazy because there's just
They
been a lot of
have.
stuff
There have.
going around. But like I said, July 1 of this year, we're transitioning. It's slowed down a little bit. But I mean, believe it or not, we are about a month away for our men's soccer's, women's soccer's, volleyball, our fall
Yeah.
sports jumping into it. So we'll see what happens.
Memphis did opt in to be one of the
Mhm.
participants, and I don't even try to understand all of it. I'm going to leave that to the people that get paid for that, and
Yeah.
and just continue to enjoy sports that and be a
Nice.
supporter. But it is a fascinating time,
Mhm.
and things change so quickly. I have noticed. I want to say at least three schools. So Stephon Curry,
Yep.
Shaquille O'Neal, and Trey, I can't think of his name from
Right
Atlanta.
now.
Yes, they have all taken on general or assistant general manager positions
Yes.
with colleges. Two were their alma mater, and I think Shaq, his son's playing at one.
At Sac State, which is going to be in our league next year. So very familiar with that one.
Yeah. Um, do you kind of see more of those type of roles being added to college athletic departments? The general manager, more like pro teams?
I do think it's going to be necessary.
Yeah,
I think it depends on the size of the institution you're at and the
sure,
resources you have
sure.
available. Um, I think the Sac State one, so Sacramento State, Shaquille O'Neal, I think that one's unique. I don't
Yeah.
know how long he'll be there once his son graduates.
Yeah.
So that one kind of can be viewed differently, but they've had calls with general managers of men's basketball teams. Women's basketball is starting to get into that space, and then football. I think the amount of time and effort that goes into managing those rosters, you almost have to have someone do it.
Sure.
You can't expect
Right.
a head coach
No,
to do that and coach a football team. So I think it's becoming a necessity.
I agree.
Um, what the landscape is going to look like 3, 4, 5 years from now, I don't know. I think anyone that says they know is lying. So I think right now in the immediate, just with all the changes, I do think it would be nice to have someone else around that's familiar with these kind of models. But we'll see if they stick
Yeah.
around. I don't know.
Surprisingly enough, I shouldn't say that. Memphis just hired Memphis basketball, the men's team
Mhm.
just hired the first female on the staff who will be the director of basketball operations. And I don't believe I don't believe she even played sports. I don't believe that. She comes from compliance. And I found that very interesting that person was put in that role just because it's so different. We've had previous people or men who have been
Mhm.
coaches, and I think it's interesting, and I think it pushes our program forward a little bit more in terms of
Absolutely.
what's coming. um, let's go back and if you can look back at your career, not necessarily high school but maybe college and forward, um, what are three things that, or maybe one thing that you kind of wish you'd had more of that would have helped you navigate through your career better?
So,
Or,
and
no,
from
go
college.
ahead. Yeah, from
Oh,
college.
I one of the things I wish I would have taken another English class. I think writing is so
Ah,
important.
yes.
I wish I would have spent a little bit more time probably focusing in the one English class I took, and then maybe would have added another one on, maybe analytical writing or research writing.
Mm,
I think in the space that at least I'm in right now, it's a lot of reading and a lot of writing, technical writing. So I wish
right.
I would have been able to lean into that a little bit more. Oof. And then the other three things, I mean, I think we all can look back and I wish I would have spent more time enjoying the moment. I mean, being
Yeah.
a student athlete is just so fun. I wish there were times when, believe it or not, 6 a.m. practices. There's nothing like going to the boathouse at 4:45 a.m., getting ready for the practice with your girls, and then leaving with all the endorphins rushing. You're like, let's have a great day. So I wish I would have enjoyed those hard practices a little bit more. And then three, network. I wish I would have put my name out there a little bit more. And I think there's power to sharing that, hey, I want to be in this space. Saying that out loud to someone, I
Yeah.
think is really awesome. So if you want to work in sports, go tell someone that works in sports, hey, I'm interested in this area. If you ever have anything, you don't have to give it to me, but would love to talk to you about it sometime. I think a lot of people wait to do that until after they're graduating or right before they graduate. I wish I would have started my freshman year, start to get to talk to people. So
No,
the
I totally agree with that. I think that so many people wait to be ready
Mhm.
when you just need to start talking about it, put it out there, ask people questions. I absolutely agree with that. Um, if you could go, let me do this one. What's your definition of success? How has that evolved from when you were in high school to now?
I think for me, like in high school at least, success was synonymous with winning. So
Mm,
whatever it was, I wanted to win at it. And winning changed. I mean, whether that's like the highest grade in the class, like I'm winning. First one done with running at practice, I won. So I think that's how I viewed success previously. As I have evolved, success now looks like how can I make the biggest impact and have the most fun doing it. I think there are things that we don't enjoy doing. I do not enjoy writing meeting reports,
I know.
but I know it's important for the process. And I also know if I write a good meeting report and kind of continue to show up in that way, there's probably going to be a day where I don't have to write the meeting reports anymore.
Sure.
Someone else will do it. So success is not playing the long game, understanding there's a goal at the end, but at least I'm having fun doing it. I'm still enjoying showing up to work, and I still feel like my work is purposeful.
I do want to ask, when you since you've left KU, how has your exercise routine or goals, how has that changed since college?
Oh, and Sandy, we could probably have a whole other podcast about body image and how that changes, especially for female student athletes
Yes, yes.
after you're done competing. And that's something I speak to my female student athletes about now. I will say I had to really rebuild my relationship with working out and, quite honestly, eating. I mean, when you are eating to fuel your
Right,
body to compete at that level, I mean, you're eating everything in sight. And then when you're done competing like that, when you go to the gym and I'm just going to walk on the treadmill, that didn't necessarily feel like a workout. So then at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, I didn't work out today. I'm awful. Like, I am
right,
a bad person because I didn't work out or I didn't give my 100%. Or I remember there's a couple times I would be running and I'm like, right, we're going to sprint the last half of this. And my girlfriend would be like, why? Why are you doing that? I'm like, well, we have to get ready for it. And like, get ready for what? Like, you're not
yeah,
competing anymore. Um, so like I said, I could spend all day on this. I had to rebuild my relationship with working out and being comfortable saying like, "Hey, a 45-minute walk on the beach, that's a workout. You're not a bad person if you didn't go
right.
lift 250 pounds like you used to. I can't do that anymore." And I have to be okay with that. And, you know, body weight too will fluctuate. I mean, that's your body kind of recentering what its
Right.
natural appetite or rhythm is. And it might take 3 or 4 years, and that's okay. Um, so yeah, you asked
Yeah.
me how has it changed? I've had to rebuild it. It was awful. It's gotten better, and I'm fairly happy where I am now.
That is a conversation so many of my female guests have had on here, and a few men.
Yeah,
I've had a few women talk about how, especially the ones that ran track, how, when they left their sport, their bodies started having withdrawals
yeah,
from the lack of that aggressive exercise,
okay,
and they've talked about body image and body weight. And, I think for the women, you're right, it is more difficult in so
yeah.
many aspects than it is for the men. But yeah, I always like to ask that question because everybody kind of gives the same response a little bit, but in some ways it's a little different for everybody.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question because I do think it's something that gets missed because it's almost like
Yes.
taboo. Like we don't want to talk about body image. I'm like, we should, because I
Yes.
think the other thing we don't think about as well is like, when I'm with all my teammates at KU, like we all kind of look the same. We all got broad shoulders. We kind of
Right.
we're muscular ladies. But when you get out into the real world, I mean, now I feel like I'm massive because everyone else around me is what would be considered like normal size, or they're
How
not working out as much.
how tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
Okay. I'm 5'3", but my nieces are 5'9" and 5'11", so I'm used to that.
So yeah, but like just how you see yourself. Like when I'm taking a group picture with my teammates, like we all look the same. But if I'm
Yeah.
taking a group team picture with the other ladies I work with, you could kind of feel like you think you stand out because you might be a little bit bigger. But like I said, that's a whole other thing for another day. I think you have to be able to be proud of it. I
Mhm.
feel strong, and that's really kind of the lens you need to look through it rather than how you show up in pictures.
I agree with that. And I started asking that question because it is a part of the process. It is a part of the transition from your sport to something else. And I
Yeah.
think that, it's not one people talk about very much or, as a part of the story. I know that we're coming to the end now. I want to know if you could go back and talk to your 9-year-old self, 9-year-old Angie, what would you say to her?
I would say continue to have fun.
Mm.
Um, don't take yourself too seriously. Stay the course, all the general mantras, but continue to have fun and enjoy the time you have with your family and all that good stuff. So I would not give her anything too serious. If I remember her correctly, she was a bit crazy.
And I'm sure are your brothers younger or older?
They're younger, but they're big boys. So they're, like I mentioned, 6'7", 6'8". They both
Wow.
played college football. So although if you get us together, I look like I'm the younger one, I'm still the oldest, and I make sure they understand that.
Really quick, I want to do a quick flash fire Q&A. So, what sport would you never try, not even once?
Water polo. I've started to watch that a little bit now, like being on the West Coast. That's aggressive.
It
Water
is.
polo is nuts.
It is. What first concert you ever went to?
I went to a Michael Bublé concert back in the
Okay.
day. A lot of
Okay.
fun. Christmas edition.
One pre-race or pre-game ritual you still swear by.
Oh, I listen to music. And kind of like the girl jam rock music to start the workout right. So I really enjoy music before a game.
Okay, and then dream vacation destination right now, no budget, no limit.
New Zealand. I'd love to go
Ah,
explore New Zealand.
yes, yes, I would too. If your life had a theme song today, what would it be?
Um, ooh, I think life is a highway. I think there's a lot of things that I were you gonna say that's yours?
You're my spirit animal. I love that. I love that song.
I think one thing I really learned through kind of just the years, especially with just the craziness going on with at least the sports industry, is we're gonna ride it out. Enjoy as much as you can. Have fun with what you can have fun with, and it will be okay in the end.
I totally agree. And where can everybody find you on social media?
Like we had mentioned multiple times today, I am on LinkedIn. I will
Yes.
say I try to check it fairly avidly, and I do welcome anyone to jump into my inbox. I do enjoy conversations like these with Sandy. But others, if you ever want to have a conversation about advice or just some of the things that I've done previously, welcome that. I'm also on Twitter, Angie Allen 13, not super active, but I get on there every now and then.
And I'll pop all that into the show notes and on the video screen here. Angie, thank you so much for doing this. I so appreciate it.
No, thank you. And like I mentioned, I love the idea of the fifth quarter. How can we help current, former, and future student athletes prepare for life after sport? I think there's so much you can take from it. So I really appreciate you creating the platform for me to come on, but also something I'm definitely going to share with my student athletes just as another resource.
Oh, I love that. Thank you all for watching and listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all of your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.